Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Effing with the Ineffable. I am Zoe.
And I'm Smokey Piggleton.
This is our first time recording in a long time. I don't even remember. Do you remember the last time we recorded?
Months ago.
It's been a while. It's been quite the while.
I've been busy.
Yeah, it's the end of spring now, I guess. Is it summer yet? Summer
I believe the official first day of summer is like 2-3 days away.
Yeah, so it's spring. And spring's a busy time for both of us because we're trying to grow things and gosh, it's been a really frustrating week. Hold on one second. Okay, I'll cut that out. So we bought, you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay, we bought some fruit trees this spring, I guess, and 2 apple trees, 2 cherry trees, and a pear tree, and a partridge and a pear tree. And one of the cherry trees like totally died, so we took it back to the store and they gave us store credit, which is nice. But I've been trying to keep my other trees alive, and first of all, we had this horrible infestation of Japanese beetles. Have you ever had those in your garden?
Yes. Interesting, because I printed this off the other day. The fruit cocktail trap.
If you
can buy Japanese beetle traps of all sorts.
Yes.
But most are no more effective than a can of fruit cocktail. Open the can, let it sit in the sun for a week to ferment. Place it on top of bricks or wood blocks in a light-colored pail and fill the pail with water to just below the top of the can. So the beetles will head for the sweet bait, fall in the water, and drown.
Huh. Well, if you want a good Japanese beetle trap to buy, I have a good recommendation, and it is super effective because it's got like pheromones in it that attract them. Literally, the minute I opened it up, they just came swarming around me. And I'm like trying to get it set up, and they're just like all over me.
You don't want to put it close to to where you want to get rid of them.
You want them like the lady on the phone was like, put them at the spot. Hold on one second. The lady on the phone was like, put them at the farthest spot away from your plants on your property. I don't know if that's quite true, because then on the package it says like you want them 8 to 25 feet away from you don't want them right on the plant.
Right.
But you don't want them, like, if you put them too far away, it's not going to be attractive enough, I guess. So anyway.
Who's this lady you talked to somebody on the phone about it?
The lady from the store where we buy all of our
Oh, is this the nursery?
Yeah, I don't want to say the name because in case people Google it or something, but they're really nice people, but I just don't want to expose where we live. But anyway, yeah, so I talked to her, because that's where I bought them from. I bought the traps from there. You can also buy something called, this might be really boring for people.
Using credit?
No.
It is kind of boring. Yeah.
But you can also buy something called Milky Spore, which is like something that you dump in your garden and it will like disrupt their life cycle. But it's like $60, so it's kind of expensive. But anyway,
how much is the pheromone trap?
They're like $12 each, which isn't bad. It's really helped. We've caught,
it kills them, or it just draws them away.
Well, it traps that. It's kind of like what your setup. It attracts them, and then they go into this bag and they can't get out.
Okay.
But yeah, we've literally trapped hundreds of them since we opened our traps.
You were having skeletized leaves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could see them on there, and I would spray the tree with water. Well, that was part of the issue too. I kept like trying to figure it out. I looked up a homemade pesticide recipe. Don't do that, because I think I like really messed up my trees doing that. All the leaves turned brown. So who knows?
All the leaves are brown.
then, like literally the day after I get this whole Japanese beetle situation set up, figured out, a deer came and like completely broke the branches off one of the trees and like ate all the leaves. It's like I called your mom, my grandma, because I know she's had issues with deer eating her trees and plants. And I was like, do you have any advice? Blah, blah, blah. But then I was like, I am so glad that other people grow most of my food, because if I had to grow all my own food, like it's so hard. It's just one thing after another. It's like,
actually, we've got enough space, and my garden is settled in enough now. I could grow most of the food that I want to eat, except for meat. But if I started to go without meat, I could pretty much live out of my garden, just getting fresh stuff almost every day. Yesterday I ate a frittata, so to speak, of squash. I had like about 40 squash blossoms
nice.
and some chard and an onion and a little potato that I accidentally had pulled up. So
So anyway, all that to say, we've been busy gardening, and I've been raising my chickens, and we've been trying to figure out all this.
And you've been doing your homeschooling and doing church, and yeah, you've been busy. Well,
I mean, I'm always busy, but really now that it's so hot that we don't really want to be out, especially in the middle of the day, like right now, we are back to filming, at least for this week. So
yeah, last couple of days have been so hot. It's been
really brutal. I went the other day. When was it? It was the day I went and bought those beetle traps. I guess it was Thursday. I got all the kids, and it's such a hassle as a parent of 3 young kids to like go anywhere. So like I had to get them all in the car and go buy the traps. And then by the time we were all in the car, I'm like, we might as well go do something. So we went to the park. But
the one by the library?
The one with the lake with the ducks and the big.
Oh, down there. Okay.
Yeah. We like that park, although it's not super shady, so it's kind of hard. But it was. I took a screenshot of it. It was like 85 degrees, but it said the real feel was like 98 degrees. Yeah. Because it was so humid, and we were there for like 45 minutes, and we were all like, it's like dying and crabby, so we just left. And this was like 10 in the morning. This wasn't like in the middle of the afternoon. This was 10 in the morning, so it was hot. Thankfully
this is yesterday you're talking about.
This was Thursday, so like a few days ago.
Yeah, it was hot. Yeah. I work indoors during the week, so I got AC, and that's pretty nice.
Yeah. Today though has been nice. I was outside today mowing.
Yeah, not bad. I was outside doing a little bit of stuff, working on my trailer.
So, what do we want to talk about today?
I got my Grand Canyon hat.
Wow, that's nice. It's like I don't even know. I don't even know what that is. It's a nice one.
Dr. Livingston, I presume. Don't I look like an explorer?
A little bit, yeah. You look like Nigel Thornberry.
I was hoping more for like Indiana Jones, but what the hell? Nigel Thornberry. All right. So yeah, I don't know. Do we have there's been a lot of stuff going on. Any governmental oversteps that we want to talk about lately?
I don't even know. I mean, first of all,
they've ruined the market. Right now, we've got tremendous inflation. Things just keep getting worse on inflation. The stock market, if anybody cares, has really just tanked.
I mean, like, I don't know. obviously inflation sucks. Every time I fill up my gas tank, I want to cry.
$4.50 a gallon. Yeah.
Especially now that we just bought a van and we're going on like 3 huge road trips in the next month and a half, which is really hard. But what can you do? But
try to economize, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably the people who bought Teslas are happy.
Yeah. I went on my brokerage, my stock brokerage account, just because I was like, I wonder how it's doing. I like never ever check it because but the thing is, it's like, okay, yeah, you see the graph and it's like, yeah, it's down from where it was.
Like, oh no.
But over the course of the last 2 years, it's increased a lot from where it was. So it's like, you have to just remember that, like with stocks, you're playing the long game.
If you're not playing the long game, you're playing to lose.
Yeah. Some people try to, day trade or whatever.
I think timing. It's not a matter of timing. It's a matter of buying quality stocks and staying put, or just buying index funds, which is what I do. Just buy later.
If there's any benefit to trying to figure out timing, it's that right now when the stock market's down, you want to buy. Like you just don't want to necessarily.
It might not have bottomed yet. There might be we might head into even more of a recession.
The best time to buy is always as soon as you have the money. That's the truth of it. That's my only stock advice I'll give for the day. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of negative stuff going on in the world, but this is why I don't follow politics at all anymore. I'm very uninterested in it. And when I do follow it, it just makes me depressed. Not makes me depressed, but it's not fun to think about. And it makes me want to become Amish and just like go away from the world and not be a part of it anymore. I tell my husband that all the time. I'm like, whenever he sends me like a news article about something ridiculous, I'm like, I'm becoming Amish. I'm doing it. I'm leaving the world. So I don't know. I'm just not even.
Is that the modern day version of moving to Canada? People used to always say, that's it. I'm moving to Canada. I can't abide these fellow citizens.
Canada's worse though.
I know, right?
Yeah, I don't want to move to Canada where it's like an actual socialist nightmare
anymore. You have to just drop out of society some other way.
I've been embarking on this personal project lately to try to like understand how to. I feel like my school years utterly failed me at like knowing how to read literature and understand it and how to like analyze it. And I have a very hard time understanding like what good literature is and stuff like that. So I discovered this podcast a little while.
You've read the Fly Guy books, right?
I discovered this podcast a while ago called Close Reads from the Circe Institute, which is like a classical education research institute that I really like, headed by Andrew Kern, who I just love him. I watch everything he does and he's the best. But his son, David Kern, hosts this podcast. And the reason I found it is because Andrew Kern is always talking about Brideshead Revisited, this book, Brideshead Revisited. And he says, it's like one of the best books of the 20th century.
That's what he says anyway, huh?
Yeah. And then I was watching something else, like totally unrelated, something Catholic. I don't even remember what it was. And they were talking about Brideshead Revisited. And I was like, okay, that's weird. Like 2 people that I respect have brought this up. I should read this book. And I read it and I loved it. It was amazing. but I was Googling, I don't know, something about it. And I found this podcast, Close Reads, where they would read, like, after every chapter, they would have a podcast, like, discussing the chapter or whatever.
Wow.
Either like 1 or 2 chapters. But so I listened along with it, and it like really made me start like asking questions and like seeing patterns in the book in a way that I would never do if I was just on my own. And a huge benefit of it was like the hosts would ask questions and I would like stop and think about my answer to the question, and then they would answer it and it would be like completely different, and then I would have like these arguments with them in my head, which was just great. But anyway, I've been trying to like understand all this. I've been trying to go back and listen to their old episodes and get better at understanding literature and what quality literature is and all this stuff. And one of them was a short story by, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but Sartre, John Paul Sartre.
Brett Favre.
But it's a short story by him called
I think it's just Sartre.
I think it's just Sartre. Yeah. It's spelled like Sartre.
Brett Favre isn't Favre.
Yeah.
Favre.
Well, it's a French name, and I am horrible at French, so like pronunciation. So I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But he has this short story called The Wall.
Je ne sais quoi that you just can't get about French.
He has a short story called The Wall. Have you ever heard of it or read it?
I've heard of it.
It's very short.
I don't know that I've ever read any significant portions of Sartre.
His work.
His work.
I
was more a fan of Camus.
Yeah, well,
Albert Camus.
Camus got brought up a lot in the discussion, the Close Reads discussion, because they were obviously talking about French existentialism and all this stuff. But where was I going with this? Oh, so The Wall, I'll even link it below because you can find it online for free. It's about 15 pages of like Times New Roman 12-point font. So it really doesn't take long to read at all. And I won't give away the ending. There's a big twist ending to the story, but the whole point is like this. It takes place during the Spanish Civil War, and these 3 people are prisoners, and they're going to be like, they're told right at the beginning, you're going to be executed the next day. So then it's like them facing their mortality, facing the fact that they're going to die, having to like figure out how they're going to cope with this during the night, basically. Very interesting story, but the thing that it made me really appreciate is like, as bad as our like government is, and I do think it's bad, like we were just talking last week about how I kind of wish we had anarchy and just like tore the whole thing to the ground, because I feel like our government is so corrupt and just lost its purpose and whatever. But
it's so difficult to dismantle established power blocks.
Power does not, like, people who have power do not want to give it up.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad I'm not alive during the Spanish Civil War, because if you were like a political revolutionary, they would just throw you in jail, have a trial, which was just them saying, is this your name? Yeah, you're sentenced to death. Like that was basically it. And so I don't know, it kind of makes you appreciate our system of law to
the
whatever
democratic process.
Yeah, I mean, my husband got a job as doing things that are part of that democratic process of law, and it gives you a lot of firsthand experience with the way crime works and the way crime is handled and all that stuff. And for the most part, in our experience so far, it's been not super corrupt.
Yeah.
It's been working out pretty well, I think. Some of the people who are accused of things are innocent, even at this small level.
Weird how my hair is it just a shadow? Must just be the shadow. It makes my hair seem so much darker over on this side. Doesn't it?
This is fascinating for the listeners.
Yeah, it's just weird. Yeah, it's not corrupt at a local level necessarily. I mean, some places are corrupt. You know, they have old boy networks that are still in place, and you know, it's not justice is not blind.
Yeah. Well, and another it's weird how when you start, Andrew Kern has some quote about how basically education is just about connecting things. Like everything is about seeing the connections between things. But it's weird how when you start reading things, you start making connections between everything you read and everything else. So like the first story on the Close Reads podcast was a Flannery O'Connor short story called A Good Man is Hard to Find. Have you ever read that?
I don't believe I ever have. No.
Very disturbing. She actually says she wishes people would know the ending of it before they read it so that they can know what's going to happen, so that they can like see how the story is building. It's another very short story, but that one is another one about people facing their death. And then I read The Wall, and now I'm reading Go Set a Watchman, which is the sequel to Kill a Mockingbird. I read it like back when it first came out.
Why? Oh, okay. So you want to read it?
I read it back when it first came out, and then I'm reading it again. I'm assuming you haven't read it.
I haven't read it. I don't think it got really good press.
It was definitely like controversial because Atticus in the original story is obviously like a huge defender of African Americans and their rights and stuff. And then in the sequel, it kind of makes him seem like he's racist. I don't know. Like
just because he joins the Klan, you know, people got this. No, I'm kidding.
He doesn't really join the Klan, but it's more complicated than that. But he is part of this group that's kind of like entertaining people who have these like very racist ideas and stuff. And the main character, Scout, has like a huge problem with this. I'm only halfway through it, so I can't really speak to all the whole story and all of its implications, but that was definitely a time of corrupt governance for sure. I mean, they're like a part of both To Kill a Mockingbird and Go Set a Watchman. A central point in that story is an African-American man is accused of a crime, and you see how the like political system works out. Hold on one second. So, yeah, it is interesting how when you start trying to educate yourself and trying to read more, everything just seems connected to each other. You know, you can draw connections between anything. And that's why one of my homeschooling kind of speaker personality person who I like is Sarah Mackenzie, who she really advocates for reading aloud to your kids at all ages. And she has a way of teaching. She calls it teaching literature without a curriculum, where she's just like, you can take any book and ask like the same set of questions about any book, and you can have like a good fruitful discussion from it. And it's basically like what does the main character want and why can't they have it? Like, who's the most courageous character in the story? Who's the most like funny character in the story? And like, you can just take any, you can take a lot of these same types of very open-ended questions and ask them. You don't want to ask yes or no questions because that will just basically end the conversation. But open-ended questions like that, you can really have good conversations with your kids about books in that way. So I don't know where I'm going with all this, but
Well, that's good. We used to have the Great Books Club, which is kind of a nice thing because it selects these pieces of literature to read over and then to have discussions about. And they actually have a bunch of questions generated as part of the discussion. It's like a curriculum.
yeah.
If ever you want to borrow any of those, I got those sets of great books, or at least I used to. Maybe I got rid of some of them now.
Yeah.
But those are fun to read through, and then it's even more fun to get together with a bunch of people and discuss.
There's a book club. It's an international thing called Well Read Mom, and it's a Catholic-based book club that I was part of in Iowa when we lived in Iowa, and then I was part of it in the DC area when we lived there. And there's not really one in this area, which is kind of weird because it's a bigger area than Iowa when we lived in Iowa. But I don't know why. And I was thinking about maybe starting one last year, but I was pregnant and sick and just moving into the house and everything. And so I didn't. But I really like that book club because they do a book a month. And then you get together. They always have like a little introductory audio to listen to that just kind of introduces the book and the author and whatever. Then you read the book and then you get together with a bunch of people and have like good discussions. And they do have like questions, like pre-set questions that you can use, or you can just have a conversation. And a lot of the times we would just have like a really open conversation about the book, and they were great. Like, I know the one that they're reading right now, I think, is Kristen Lavren's Daughter, by I think it's Sigrid Undset, something like that. Yeah, I've heard that book is really good. I want to start reading it.
You know who loved those books was Nona.
Yeah,
I think maybe Mom read one, or maybe read them all.
Yeah, it's like a 3-part, it's like a trilogy. I'm excited to read those, and I borrowed the first one from you guys, and it I'll read it eventually, but I'm kind of going back and reading all these other books from the Close Reads podcast. I highly recommend that podcast, by the way. It's really great. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like how do you analyze a piece of literature to know if it's good? Because another thing I've been struggling with a lot lately is, I don't remember how this got brought up, but I've been doing research about whether Catholics should let their kids read Harry Potter. Because I know that's like quite a controversial thing in the Catholic world. The priest that we had growing up was very against Harry Potter, but he was very against a lot of other stuff too that I think is kind of innocuous, like Pokemon and I don't know, all kinds of stuff. He had some extreme ideas about things, in my opinion.
He was pretty dogmatic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't,
and not in a bad way. I mean, he felt that those things were important to consider.
Yeah.
That his main beef with Harry Potter was in contrast to Lord of the Rings, where the Hobbit basically is innocent and does not want to use the power of magic. especially black magic. Harry Potter is all about using that magic, and and it's the problem is you don't use magic. Magic ends up using you. It's like drugs. It's like any kind of unhealthy power. It ends up using you. You end up gaining the world but losing your soul.
I suppose so. I actually just watched like a 2.5 hour webinar, which I can link, about Catholics and Harry Potter. And it was put on by Brandon Vaught, who works for Word on Fire. And he had 2 people on his show, and they all pretty much were pro Harry Potter. All of them either like read the books with their kids or were pretty pro Harry Potter. But they did say, like, we don't necessarily think that everybody should read these, because for some people, like, so one of the biggest issue with Harry Potter in my mind is that it can supposedly lead people to the occult. It can lead people to try to use magic in this world. When really my biggest argument in favor of Harry Potter is that the world of Harry Potter is very different from our world. In Harry Potter, you either are born with magic or you're not. And you're not like it's like, even if the Muggles tried to acquire magic, they're not going to be able to. You're either born with it or you're not. So it's not like trying to gain a power outside of yourself. It's just that you have this power, and now you have the choice. Are you going to hone it and use it for good, or are you going to hone it and use it for bad? Which so that's why I think it's a little bit different. Whereas like in this world, if you're using, they also draw a distinction between invocational magic and incantational magic. So basically incantational magic is just like you say a word and something happens, which doesn't really happen. Like if I say any of the spells in Harry Potter, I don't think they're affecting anything in this world. That hasn't been my experience so far, at least. Now, maybe you could say that they're doing something in the spiritual realm and whatever. I don't know, but I know that if I say
it opens a portal for the devil to be able to start to manipulate you and bless your incantations.
Some people
that was what Father Dan always used to say.
There's
that people would start out, just play spell casting, and then the devil would use that to hook them.
Yeah. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I mean, I think that that's not something that you should necessarily play around with. I don't want to risk it. But I know that like invocational magic is probably a real thing. If you call upon the power of some demon or spirit to try to have them use their power to affect things in this world, like that's a problem. And that is trying to use dark forces or use a power that you don't possess to try to like be like God, right? So that is the problem with things like occult things. I'm obviously not in favor of that at all. Now, I know here's what I'll say. I read Harry Potter when I was in middle school. It never made me want to try to actually do like dark magic, actual occult stuff. It never interested me in that because I realized like, I am not a wizard. I'm not a witch. Like I was not born with this power that was just bestowed upon me. So I never tried to do stuff like that. Now, some people have the inclination to do that, or some people have, past experiences that would lead them to be more vulnerable to stuff like that. And I think for those people, they probably shouldn't read Harry Potter. But yeah.
How do those people know who they are?
Well, I'm saying if they've been involved with the occult in the past, or if they find that enticing or interesting. You kind of have to know yourself, I guess.
And there's a larger question about what makes good media, whether it's books, TV, movies,
And that's
songs,
how we got into this.
whatever.
You know if something's good literature, right?
Right. And then there's the psychological impact of that stuff, which, I mean, they've been talking about. Mom watches Bill Maher, who's he's fairly reasonable. He was talking about Hollywood is all hot and bothered about guns in our society. However, Hollywood is the worst offender for displaying media that shows people solving problems using guns.
Yeah.
People get offended, people get injured, or whatever, and then they seek revenge, and then they're using guns to get power and to get revenge and all that stuff. And there's just tons of gunplay in movies.
Yeah. I've heard too that like American film is a lot more like, as far as like film ratings, like rated R, rated PG-13, all that kind of stuff. I've heard that like they're pretty lenient about violence. Like you can get a lot more violence displayed and it's not considered like as graphic as like sexual content. Like sexual content, they are a lot harsher about like, okay, only adults should see this. Whereas like in Europe, I've heard that it's very different. Like they are very strict about violence, but they're not as strict about like nudity and sexual content in movies. So I don't know.
I can certainly see how it's, violence is much worse for the world than sex.
Yeah, I mean,
people are ready for what they're ready for. Like you were saying, you read Harry Potter in middle school, you were mature enough, you understood, whatever. Some people play Call of Duty when they're in high school and they're already troubled and already alienated, and it starts to fuel their idea that, okay, one of these days I'm just gonna wreak havoc and plow through the school with as much mayhem as I can.
Yeah, I don't know if it has so much to do with Call of Duty or more stuff about just nihilism, relativism, and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's probably a combination, but I have been thinking about in my life about the idea of like desensitization to stuff. I find it kind of encouraging actually that when I was in high school, and college, I watched a lot of movies and a lot of them had some really graphic stuff in it. Like Quentin Tarantino and all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. Mostly graphic, violent stuff, although graphic sex and nudity stuff too. But I've found that like in the last few years, I've watched, I could probably count the number of, well, now we're doing family movie night, so that's not so true. But like the amount of adult movies that I've watched like on my own in the last 5 years, I could probably count on like two hands. Like literally, I almost never watch movies anymore just because I don't have the time and I'm almost always around my children. So I'm not going to watch stuff like Quentin Tarantino because I have little kids running around. But I found that like when, in high school.
Luke and I just watched Kill Bill, the Kill Bill
and
movie.
Those have a lot of graphic stuff in it.
Oh man, brutal.
Yeah. And when I was in high school, and watching those things, I got pretty desensitized to all of that. And it just didn't really faze me or bother me very much because I was just like, this is what's in movies. But I found that like now, after having a period of time where I'm not watching it, I actually am more sensitive to those things. And that kind of makes me happy because I'm like, oh, I can regain my sensitivity. It's not just like once it's gone forever. Yeah.
Like reclaiming your virginity or your innocence.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I mean, now like because what was I watching? I don't know. I was watching something and I was just like, this is too graphic for me. But I think it was like a violent thing. But back in the day, I mean, I was watching like Pulp Fiction was one of my favorite movies, and people's heads get blown off, and there's graphic things in that movie. Like, let's just put it that way.
I know the movie.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some encouragement for you. Maybe if you feel like you're completely desensitized to things, I think you can regain that. Yeah, I don't know. Do you really think people can just play games like Call of Duty and become like so dissociated from reality that they think that now they want to go shoot up a school because of that? I mean, I think Jordan Peterson.
Well, I don't think that there's a single factor. I mean, there's millions of people who've played Call of Duty. There's not that many people who are becoming mass murderers. However, there does seem to be a strong interest among those people who do become mass murderers in violent video games and stuff like that. Extremism stuff, getting into extreme political stuff. Those people tend to be more prone to violence.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because they have violence in their heart, and so it's the abyss within that's calling to the violence in the content, or if it's the violence in the content that is somehow molding and it's somehow directing.
Yeah. One of the hard things about life is that we'll probably never know the answer to that,
I don't know that we'll never know. I think there's so many factors that are involved, and there's so many changes that are going on all the time that it's very difficult, especially in the social sciences. It's not really a science. It's more of a matter of kind of reading tea leaves or watching for trends and stuff. There's certain things that seem to be true, but we know a lot less than we. Oh, George.
I know, like Jordan Peterson makes the point that he thinks that stuff is basically a lot of it is attributable to the fact of like a nihilistic worldview of where you start thinking like, okay, I'm going to do a bad job of explaining this because it's complicated, but you start realizing like, okay, there's this world.
You believe that nothing matters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you start thinking about the fact that like the world is full of suffering and pain, right?
Yeah.
True. I mean, that's that's one of the oldest things that people have been wrestling with forever. You can look at the book of Job, and that's what the book of Job is all about. It's like, why do bad things happen to good people? And, there's a couple of different responses that you can have to that, or at least a couple common responses people have. Some people.
My response is there is no such thing as good people. We all deserve as much misery as we get.
You think that?
Is that nihilism?
That's probably, yeah.
Or is that just a cynical view of human nature?
Yeah, I would say it's more probably that. But I mean, I think the answer in the book of Job and the Bible, and for religious people more generally, is like, we can't understand all the factors that go on in the world. And
That's certainly true so far.
something that really struck me in college when I was studying the philosophy of religion is like, God set up this universe of he made this universe rational, and there are consequences for actions. And sometimes things, like sometimes the natural world, there's consequences because of the way our natural world is set up. So things like hurricanes and tornadoes and floods and horrible events like that happen. And sometimes people die because of them. And I don't think that's God smiting us or people deserving it or whatever. I think that's a natural consequence of the fact that we live in a world with a climate and we live in a world with weather. And sometimes those things go out of control and bad things happen to us. And that's really hard to deal with. It's like people who lose babies because of miscarriages. That's actually a natural consequence of like the biological systems of our bodies taking place. A lot of times those babies are unfit because of genetic variations or whatever. And so you'll lose that baby, or something just biologically strange happens in a person's body and they can't carry that baby to term or whatever.
Or people use like a homemade pesticide and boom, everything turns brown.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think that
not that you deserved it. You caused it.
I think that's really hard for us to deal with because we are like, this is my baby, and we get attached to that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I don't think that that's God punishing us. I don't think it's God, like, I don't think it has anything to do with the state of our soul. I think it's most often just a biological reality that is really hard to deal with sometimes. Just like when kids get cancer and die. Cancer is a biological, how do I want to put it?
Variation.
Yeah.
It's a variation.
Yeah, it's a genetic tweak that happens that's unfortunately devastating for us. And so the beautiful thing about our faith is that even in the midst of these horrible things, we can offer the suffering up and make good use of it. And we can try to see what good is coming out of it. And we can try to cope and move on and realize that, life does go on and all things will end eventually, except heaven and hell. And that we need to focus on the things that matter. It's like a book I read as part of Well Read Mom book club last year, which was The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. That book was very inspirational to me. I think about this one part in it a lot, where the sister of Corrie, Betsy, she is just like such a religious, like she just has such an incredible faith. And she says, God says to give thanks always in all situations. And so even when they're at the concentration camp and they're like literally they're covered in fleas and they can't sleep and it's just horrible. And it's like something that most people would be so depressed. They just would give up all hope. And she's like, no, we need to give thanks in this situation. We need to give thanks for the fleas in our concentration camp bunk. And they do give thanks. And then they find out later the fleas were so bad that the guards wouldn't even go in to the cell. And so they end up being able to like get some food and medicine and help people get better and hide all this stuff in their bunk because it's covered in fleas and the guards won't go in and find it and confiscate it. And it's like, you can, like, if you are willing and able, you can find good in every situation, which is that's a beautiful thing about the human mind, right? Like, we can choose to be nihilistic and view the fact of pain and suffering as like, well, maybe nothing matters. Maybe the world is meaningless. Maybe I should just cause as much destruction and pain as possible because that's the only thing that is real is pain. And I think that that's what a lot of those people think is that's the only real thing. I'm going to get back at the universe for me being in it by causing as much pain and suffering as possible. Or we have the capacity to say, thank you, God, for the fleas. And I'm going to try to be hopeful and thankful no matter what. And like, what a beautiful thing about our human capability. I don't know.
Yeah. To see the redemptive aspects of things rather than just always see the negative. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a huge part of pretty much every religion on earth is trying to address the issue of suffering. I mean, if you look at stuff like Buddhism and Hinduism, a lot of that is about how to detach from suffering so that you can go through life and become enlightened or elevated above all that and whatever. I mean, suffering is a huge issue for human beings because we're self-aware. And I think a beautiful thing about Catholicism in particular is that we put such a huge emphasis on the fact that suffering can be redemptive and we need to pick up our cross and carry it and follow Jesus. And like, we can use suffering for something good. I think that's like such a beautiful thing. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, we used to have some conversations about that. And I was always the one saying, hey, pain can be your friend. Pain can teach you a lot if you're willing to learn from it. But if you reject it, if you refuse pain and you reject it and you don't accept the pains of being pure at heart, then you don't learn from it. You can't get better. You just continue to go through it and resent it instead of embracing it and going with it. All change, all growth has to come from some kind of discomfort.
That is definitely true.
You know, eventually your little guy there, he's going to get sick of lying down and he's going to want to roll over and crawl. And, it's going to be difficult for him, but the desire to have something different and the discomfort of not being able to move around is going to push him to grow into that.
Yeah. Even like, it's a weird thing being somebody who's very like open to life, because on one hand, like I want to have like a million babies. Like I want to have I just want to have like as many children as I can have.
Okay. Probably not a million though.
Not a million. I'll be lucky if I get 10.
I think that's unrealistic.
Yeah. But at the same time, like it's really hard to be pregnant as a woman. It's not fun. It's like kind of resigning yourself. Like I have a friend right now who's like, her husband and her are talking about trying to have another baby. But she's like, yeah, I have to pretty much assume, because she's debating, okay, I'm debating whether to homeschool my kids this next year or not. And she's like, well, I'm pretty much planning on being sick for 9 months. And I have to think like, is it going to be easier for me to homeschool so that I don't have to get my kid up and out of the house every day? Or is it going to be easier for me to send my kid to school so that I don't have to take care of her every day? And it's like, it's a big deal to be sick every day for 9 months. I don't know if you've ever gone through that, but it is like not pleasant. But at the same time, we're just like, it's
like having cancer, but it's curable.
I don't know if I don't know if it's as bad as having cancer. I've never had cancer, thank God. So I don't know. I know it's really not fun to be pregnant.
You don't know that you've ever had cancer anyway.
That's true.
You might have had cancer and your body just fought it off.
Yeah. I mean, I think that happens a lot, probably.
Probably in more cases than not.
Yeah. I don't really know where I was going with this other than just like I mean, the beautiful thing about life is that we can be like, yeah, it's going to suck to be sick for 9 months and then be recovering after that and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's so worth it to have like that person in your life. Like my kids are just so incredible and I love them so much and they bring so much joy. And if I didn't go through that suffering, they wouldn't be here. And so it's like, I would do it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. So I don't know.
And maybe appreciate them more because you had to suffer for them.
Yeah, probably.
The other day I was talking with my my group and we were talking about what are the promises of a faithful life? Does anybody promise that having a faithful life means that you're not going to have any suffering, that you're not going to have any struggles? Quite the opposite. I think I forget where that part is. I'm not a chapter and verse guy, but there's a part where Peter's talking about, hey, you got this, you got rewards in heaven to look forward to, and all kinds of sufferings in the meantime.
Yeah.
Like, wait, is that your sales pitch, man? You got to work on that. That's weak.
I was just talking to my priest about that because it said there's something about like he went to encourage all the disciples by saying like we will suffer many trials for the sake of the kingdom. I think it may be Paul, but it's like, wow, what an encouragement! You're gonna suffer like that, but that was his encouragement. Like you are gonna suffer this for the sake of the kingdom. Like you are gonna.
There's a reason for your suffering because there's a value to it.
Yeah, because everybody on earth is going to go through suffering,
right?
And you can either choose to make it worth it, do something good with it, or you can choose to be miserable and jaded and upset and want to cause suffering and pain to everybody around you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's the choice. That's the choice you get in life. You don't get to choose whether or not to suffer. You get to choose what you're going to do about it.
Yeah. You can ask why me, but there's no answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what Job found out. No, there's no answer to that.
Yeah.
Because. Just flat out because.
And you get to
deal with it. Suck it up, bro.
You get to try to find that thing to be grateful for in the midst of all of it, even when it seems like, how could I possibly be grateful for this situation? If Betsy Ten Boom could be dying in the concentration camp and still find things to be grateful for, I can probably find things to be grateful for. I know
I can sit in my ash pile and use the broken pot shards to scrape my boils. Thank goodness I got those broken pot shards. Otherwise, I'd have to just get messy on my fingernails.
Even the being pregnant thing, I know people who would give a lot to be able to be pregnant. Even
they would be pregnant. They would be pregnant for 9 years if they had to in order to have a baby. Yeah. And
yeah. We just finished my daughter and I just finished the series Little House on the Prairie. And the last book is really depressing. It's called The First 4 Years, and it was like she kind of half wrote it but never really edited it to like publish. So it was like published after her death. But it talks about the first 4 years of her marriage and life with her husband. And going back to the very first thing we talked about, it's like they're trying to farm and they're failing 4 years in a row because of infestation, bad weather, like all this stuff. And it's like, they literally were in debt for like 4 years in a row. They couldn't make any money because they put all their time and effort into these crops. And then a hot wind comes by and literally all the wheat dies. And it's like, that is just horrible. But there's a part that I kept thinking about again and again where, this is obviously in the late 1800s, and they have a baby, and Lara gets really sick when she's pregnant too. She said she was like emaciated. She couldn't keep any food down and all this stuff, but she finally gives birth to her baby, and they go to visit their friends, the Boast family, Mr. and Mrs. Boast. And like, they go to visit their friend and bring the baby, and they're having a good time. And then on the way out, he's like, I'll give you like all this livestock if you'll let me have your baby, because you guys can have another baby. And hold on, he just fell off the bed. What happened? But yeah, he basically offers to trade a bunch of livestock for their baby, because he's like, you guys can have more babies and we can't. We've been trying and we can't have any children. And they both like freak out and leave, and they're like, oh my gosh, go, because no, you can't have our baby. But like, think about the kind of state of mind that you have to be in to offer to trade your livestock to your friends for their baby because you are so desperate for a child. I mean, it's like that like really stuck with me reading that in that book. So anyway, yes, there's always something to be grateful for sure.
Yeah.
And this little
I'm grateful for you and your kids, and for all my kids, and for all my sufferings. I wouldn't trade anything for them now. It's all good.
Yeah, and
is that right, George?
It's Father's Day tomorrow, so this will probably go up either tomorrow or the day after. So it'll be just around Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. I know it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Not easy, but it's definitely a blessing. It's a blessing. I was saying that the other day to my guys. I was saying, as hard as it is to have kids and to have to, overcome all your selfishness and do things for other people, it's probably one of the healthiest things that you can do. If it wasn't for having kids, I would have been a lot easier to fall into dissolute living and despair, and not have any, be totally depressed and not have any reason to get up,
Totally.
Yeah. So it's a good thing.
So
people who have a reason to live tend to live better and longer.
And kids are like, you can make a reason to live that's not your kids, but kids are a really easy one.
Yeah.
Because they're
kind of built in. Yeah.
They're very needy, but they're also very loving and rewarding in a lot of ways. Okay. Thank you. And very loud. Yeah.
Not that loud. You're loud.
I hope this episode was worth listening to.
I hope so too. We seem to be a little bit all over the place, but I don't know. It's felt okay. Is it time for us to quit? I suppose it's about that
in about an hour, so we should probably sign off. But I'll link some things below for you. I hope you all have a very happy and blessed Father's Day and
first day of summer and
all that stuff. And we're gonna be on vacation this week, but I hope we'll film a podcast next week. We'll have to see. But
there's good news now. The FDA approved COVID vaccines for children as young as George.
Really?
6 months down to 6 months old.
Wow. And he just turned 6 months, so.
But there's a lot of talk about, hey, little kids, unless they've got some sort of desperate illness that they need to be kept in a bubble,
Yeah.
they're better off getting COVID than they are getting a COVID vaccine, probably.
And we've already all, I don't want to get canceled on YouTube talking about this, but we have already all had it.
Canceled? What? Cancel culture? We still living in that? My goodness. All right, anyway.
All right, well, I hope you all have a really nice Father's Day and beginning of summer, and go read some good books.
Yeah. Have some good summer reads and some yesterday we finished up watching rewatching Breaking Bad, and then we watched Better Call Saul. That first episode of Better Call Saul is so well done.
It is real. I only watched like the first season maybe of it, but I remember that first episode. It is really where he's like working at the Dunkin' Donuts or something. Where is he working?
He's working at a Cinnabon.
Yeah.
But now that follows from the end of Breaking Bad.
Yes.
But you saw all of Breaking Bad.
Yes, I haven't watched that movie El Camino or whatever it's called.
I didn't miss much.
Okay, but I have seen all of Breaking Bad and the beginning of Better Call Saul.
Yeah, El Camino was a weak link, I thought, but Better Call Saul is really starting out well, and I think they just recently had one of their most recent season released. Anyway, so if you want to binge watch something, watch that stuff. It's good. And I don't know how to say why it's good, but
I'm thinking about getting into Dorothy Sayers like mystery. What are they? They're like detective novels or whatever. She has like a whole series of them. I've heard those are good summer reads if you want a good summer read. So, all right. We're going to say goodbye.
Okay, bye.